Hi everyone, I'm Wendy, and today I'm showing you how to make a couple of whole food plant-based Halloween treats. Both recipes are free of refined sugars and are made with only 4 whole food ingredients. So let me show you how to make these easy and healthy sweet treats. First up, we have pumpkin cookie bites made with rolled oats, dates, cinnamon, and pumpkin. You'll need a food processor for this recipe, and I'm using my 10-cup Hamilton Beach food processor with the S-Blade. First, I'm adding 1.5 cups of rolled oats. You may need up to 2 cups of oats depending on how dry your dates are. I'll put the lid on and blend that into a coarse oat flour. This shouldn't take more than 30 seconds or so, depending on how powerful your food processor is. Next, I'm adding in 1.5 cups of loosely packed chopped dates. I like to chop the dates up a little bit because this isn't a very powerful food processor. That'll make it blend a little easier. Then to flavor these up, I'm adding 2 teaspoons of cinnamon. If you wanted, you could use a pumpkin pie spice blend instead, but I really love just the cinnamon. And last but not least, we have a can of pumpkin puree. I'll put the lid on and start blending that. This is a pretty thick batter, so you'll need to stop and scrape down the sides a couple of times. The food processor that I have happens to have this little scraper that you can put in so you can scrape while you blend, so I'm using that. Since I'm using whole food ingredients, this is a very dense, gooey type of cookie, so the recipe is also very forgiving and you can adjust things. As I mentioned before, you might need more oats depending on how dry the dates are, and you can blend this until it's a nice, smooth, uniform mixture, or if you want to leave it with a few little bits of dates, that's fine too. After it's blended, I'll scoop it out onto a silicone-lined baking sheet, or you can use parchment if you don't have silicone. Right here, I'm using an ice cream scoop that's about equal to a 1/4 cup, so these are going to be pretty large cookies. But I also love using a smaller 1 or 2 tablespoon scoop to make little bite-sized cookies. For this recipe, I personally like the smaller size better. And after I've scooped them all out, I press the cookies flat. I wet my fingertips just a little bit so it's not so sticky. And these won't rise, so you can put them pretty close together. These will bake for about 20 minutes in a 350-degree Fahrenheit oven. How long they bake will depend on what size you make them, but you'll just want to bake them until they're no longer sticky on top, and they should come off the tray pretty easily. But I'm going to set these aside and mix up my second batch before I bake these. Before we move on, I wanted to remind you that if you're enjoying this content, you can hit the thumbs up. This simple action, along with your comments, helps my channel to be seen by more people. Thanks for your support. And now let's make some purple sweet potato cookie bites. This recipe uses rolled oats, dates, vanilla bean powder, and purple sweet potatoes. This one does require a little bit more prep ahead of time because you have to cook the sweet potatoes. You can roast them for an extra sweet flavor, but these cookies are pretty sweet already, so for convenience, I just cook them in my Instant Pot. I add the trivet to the bottom of my 6-quart Instant Pot, then I layer in the potatoes. I just cut the ends off instead of poking the potatoes to let steam release. Even doing this, they still split sometimes, and that's okay. Finally, I add 1 cup of water, and I'm going to cook these at high pressure for 25 minutes. These potatoes are about 2 to 3 inches in diameter. If they're larger, you'll need to cook it longer. If they're smaller, you can cook it for a shorter time. Once they're done cooking and the pressure has released, I let the potatoes cool enough for me to handle them and remove the skin and mash them. Once the potatoes are prepared, the process for making the cookies is exactly the same as before. You'll start by adding 1.5 to 2 cups of rolled oats into the food processor and blending it into a coarse flour. Then add 1.5 cups of loosely packed chopped dates. Next is 1 teaspoon of vanilla bean powder. And finally, 1.5 cups of the mashed purple sweet potato. And really, you can use any kind of sweet potato you like, including orange or white fleshed potatoes. I just went with the purple because of the gorgeous color. But Japanese sweet potatoes, Hana yams, or even your standard orange sweet potato are also delicious in this. Purple sweet potatoes tend to be a little drier than other varieties, and they're also drier than the pumpkin puree from the last recipe. So this dough is even thicker, and you may need to stop and scrape down the sides of your food processor several times. But once it's all blended up, again, I'm scooping these out onto the cookie sheet and flattening them out a little bit. As I mentioned before, I'll cook them at 350 degrees Fahrenheit for about 20 minutes. Check them after about 10 or 15 minutes, and once they're no longer sticky on top and they've turned a little golden on the bottom, they should be done. Transfer these to a cooling rack and then they're ready to serve. These are best when they're fresh and still warm right out of the oven. The outside has a little bit of a crisp, chewy bite, while the inside is more gooey. I store these in the refrigerator, and they're also great cold. Once they're cold, they do lose that crisp outside, and they become almost more of a cross between a cookie and a Larabar, if you're familiar with those dried fruit and nut bars. I like to eat them this way, but if you make them ahead and you want them warm, you can simply warm them up briefly in the oven, toaster oven, or even an air fryer to get that fresh out of the oven texture back. Finally, they also freeze well, so if you want to make a big batch but you don't want to eat them all at once, you can freeze them and just pull out a couple at a time, defrost them, and again reheat. If you're looking for Halloween treats that are free of refined sugars to share with family and friends, I hope you'll give these recipes a try. Thanks for watching, and I hope to see you next time.